think people's patience is probably, like you said, it probably comes from patience. The patience it's so short, and then that probably portrays itself in anger in many ways. It probably comes from patience.
I think so. Anyway, you're listening to Ammar and
Jalf,
live on our weekly radio show right here on Spice FM and broadcast live across the globe.
And each week we'll try and bring you some views, news, and one or two clues from the business world.
Asian Business Connections aims to connect, support, and promote the Asian and wider communities.
And we'll be talking shop quite literally, and not just corner shops. So whether you're looking to start a business, have an existing business, or you just want to talk business, we can help.
We can help. We can help. And, delighted to have on the show this morning Henry Murison from the Northern Powerhouse Partnership and the wonderful Anu Kora, solicitor from Malhotra Group, in-house legal. So Anu's our latest awesome person, and flying the flag, showcasing the Northeast, and highlighting that it doesn't matter what color you are or what gender you are, you can realize your ambitions and raise your aspirations. And Henry undoubtedly is going to give us some great insights into Northern Powerhouse Partnership, but in particular, an issue that potentially could be impacting us all who live in the Northeast in regards to transport. Yeah. Big issues with transport.
Well, it'd be interesting to hear what those issues are and what the proposed solutions are.
Yeah. So I'm not going to give too much away because I'll let Henry come on and talk about that. He'll be on in 3 minutes, and then Henry's on for 10 minutes, and then we've got Anu after that. So almost a double matinee of activity. Jalf, sad to say that hundreds of thousands of children and young people have been sent home from school.
Mm-hmm.
My own son was sent home yesterday from school to isolate. And it's really painful. This is the first time that I know personally. We've had a member of staff who had to, luckily it was over a weekend, and there was no close contact with us because we all sit independently, and since then we've all been tested 2-3 times. I've had 3 tests now just to make sure, because I wasn't feeling that good last week, and naturally I need to do the right thing. So you isolate until you get a test and it comes up negative, unless you've had a close contact. And if you've had a close contact, you must isolate regardless. So it's an interesting predicament. And here's the challenge, right? Yeah, because within the schools, you have doctors, you have nurses, you have solicitors, you have people who are responsible, government officials, people who are responsible for maintaining law, order, and life. All of a sudden, the children have been sent home. They don't have any childcare. They can't give their child to anybody else because the child has been told they have to isolate. And consequently, they can no longer go to work. What's going to happen there? Yeah.
Yep.
What's going to happen there?
In terms of when people can't go to work and what have you, obviously it's going to affect so many areas of life. that we don't actually understand. It depends on who that parent is, and they're going to be at home. The work is not going to get done. Some kind of service is going to be lacking, and ultimately within society, there's going to be things that you expect. Let's say that that particular individual is a doctor, and you had a doctor's appointment, and all of a sudden, you know, or he was a surgeon, and I mean, I don't know how on earth you deal with these. The situation is so challenging.
It's very challenging, but it's equally, you know, all of a sudden my wife is having to cater and look after whilst managing her own workload and everything else. Anyway, Henry's here. Let's get him on the show. Hey, good morning, Henry.
Good morning, Ammar. Great to join you.
And
Hello, Henry.
delighted to have you here. Jalf's here as well.
Lovely to meet you, mate.
Hello.
We've been talking about you.
You know, last year I thought I promised myself I wouldn't get back into this bloody.
I hear something in the background.
Worse now.
Don't know where that is. Sorry about this. It's interesting.
Never mind. What's happening then? So he's got them board printed dairy sets from
Right. Bear with me 1 second whilst I establish what's going on, Henry. Apologies
Don't worry.
about this. Okay, it's gone. Well done. Good morning, Henry. Welcome
Good
to
morning.
Spice FM, and also being broadcast live across the globe. Shall we kick off by saying who you are, what you do, and why you do it, please?
So I'm Henry Murison. I'm director of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, and we're the organisation committed to driving forward the north of England's economy for closing that north-south divide. And we do lots of work in the northeast, which is why it's great to be back on Spice FM. Obviously, a previous visitor in a previous life, well in the studio, but it's great to be back, even if it's virtually.
Yeah. Thank you. About that.
Maybe for us, like, you know, go on like in the diary meeting.
Apologies.
Just excuses for these technical issues, because it looks as though there's some kind of voiceover over the show.
Only because we were talking about aliens earlier on, Henry.
It only take like
I feel as if
every week we're gonna go through the diary, and then, you know, things change. You can tell you stuff, right?
I'm hoping that they can hear me and see me calling them, because I think there is some technical issues there. Wonderful. I'm hoping that's resolved. So, Henry, we've got you on, appreciate, at significant short notice, and really it was because of some potential challenges and opportunities, and the fact that we need to share some news. Do you want to, other than saying that infrastructure is critical and really important to this part of the world, as it is all over the world, I thought I'd leave the data and the details to you, if I may, please.
Yeah, no, so I mean, the big argument we've been having for a long time is the northeast isn't connected with the rest of the country. And that's the thing we need to change, Ammar, right? So we need to make it easier for people to come and do business in Newcastle, in Darlington, in Durham. At the moment, there just isn't that connectivity. There's decent connectivity to London, but there isn't enough of it. But we also don't have enough connectivity to the rest of the north of England. And that's why there's been a long-term plan to bring HS2 via the East Coast Main Line to Darlington and to Newcastle, and why there's always been the plan to have a Northern Powerhouse rail network to better connect the northeast and Yorkshire to Liverpool and Manchester, and to Manchester Airport in particular, for some of those global links that are only available there or from Heathrow. Now, the challenge we've got is that in the meantime, whilst we're trying to get the money for these big projects, we're hoping to see an integrated rail plan from the government that will promise those things in detail in the next few weeks. We've also got short-term changes and cuts to services. So a lot of people in Newcastle, whether it's for leisure, for going to see friends or family, or even the football when we're in season, or in terms of the work, rely on those links to Liverpool, to Manchester. And there is a half-hourly service basically across the Pennines, which is really decent. It could be better, could be faster, could be more reliable, but it's there and it does do a job. We're going to see that halved going forward from next year under the current proposed timetable to enable more services to London, essentially to Scotland as well as to the northeast. And we just think it's the wrong trade-off, Ammar. We need to get better connectivity to London. That's why we're such great supporters of HS2, why we're such great supporters of getting more of those great LNER services down to London. But we can't do that at the expense of those links across the Pennines. And that's why we're really calling on people to respond to the consultation that's ongoing. And you can get the details on Twitter from ourselves. If you can direct message us at MP_partnership, we'll give people the details. We'll obviously share the details with you guys to share with your networks as well. Because for those business people who do rely on doing business across the Pennines, I think this will have a real impact on them. And I think we can win, because I think if there are enough people who say, actually, we really do in the northeast value our links to the northwest, we want to do more business in Manchester and Liverpool. We don't just look down south, we want to look across the Pennines as well, to really make Newcastle a real part, and the wider northeast a real part of the northern powerhouse. I think there is that will and that ambition from businesses in the northeast. And whenever I visit Ammar, and obviously I'm a previous resident in Newcastle, so I still have a lot of friends, I spend a lot of time in the city, people tell me they value that and they want that. So what we need to do is make sure that the rail industry, well-intentioned as they are, trying to run more services, doesn't run them to the wrong places and miss out parts of the country that really need that connectivity.
No, thank you for that, Henry. And you're absolutely a fantastic friend of the city and of the region. And, you know, you're absolutely spot on in that people don't realize the impact of certain decisions unless they're shared with them. Now, that particular service, so just for everybody's benefit, the service that we're talking about or making reference to is the TransPennine service, which travels primarily from Newcastle all the way across to Liverpool, and at times on to Bristol. I think is there is a service that is in that. Going to Manchester as well as on to Manchester Airport, you know, at times. So we're talking about a very critical and crucial link. And you know, certainly, I did mention this in a communication earlier this week. In fact, I was on that very service 3 weeks ago. You know, for me, you know, it's not a fast service, and I appreciate that. I can get to Liverpool quicker in car, but it's a convenient service and it's a critical service, and it's especially important that you know, that railway and train provision doesn't prohibit people, because a lot of people who use the train as well, Henry, aren't fortunate enough to have a car, and they are reliant upon those services to get across, see family, and even work. You know, is the point, and fully respect and appreciate that a number of, you know, there's been a relative reduction as a consequence of COVID and the pandemic in the number of passengers, and there's reduced space and everybody's spaced out, and I get that, and rightly so. We need to be precautious, but there's almost a subsequent argument that there should be an increase in those services as a consequence of their reduction in availability, as opposed to a reduction in that.
I completely agree. And I think the challenge we've got, right, is the government has just agreed money to make those journeys faster and more efficient. So we want to build a new line through Bradford between Leeds and Manchester, which will give Newcastle direct connectivity to Bradford. And I think it's a real problem that one of the North's most diverse cities has for so long, where I now live, been disconnected from the rest of the northern cities. I don't think that's good for the type of society we want to build, to give opportunity to everyone. But in the interim, actually, we're spending a lot of money. We're spending billions on that line between Leeds and Manchester to enable people in the northeast to being able to travel to Manchester. So at the same time, actually reducing the number of seats every hour so that people have to connect at York, they don't get that direct service. It's not giving the northeast the full benefit, because what that will mean is that people in Scarborough, people in Middlesbrough, right, will benefit from those new improved services, the better frequency, the more reliability. But actually Newcastle in particular doesn't get what it deserves, because it's one of the great cities of the north. It should have as good a train service to Manchester, to Leeds, to Liverpool as anywhere else. And I think that there's a particular point about the Northeast that for a long time when I came into post, people sort of felt like the Northern Powerhouse didn't really resonate in the Northeast because it didn't feel like it really meant anything to the Northeast. Well, actually, we've seen the National Centre for Ageing. We've seen what's been done in terms of the National Centre for Data, big investments made as part of that Northern Powerhouse project at Newcastle University. And I think with people like Chris Day, who's the Vice-Chancellor there is absolutely Newcastle playing its real role as a leader in this debate. And so at the same time as the universities are getting their act together, we see the development of Helix, incredible investment that's been brought to the city by Nick Forbes working with Pat Ritchie, the chief executive, and with others now through the devolved arrangements and that devolution deal with the mayor in North Tyneside, Northumberland Council as well. You've got real ambition, actually, and I think an ambition that the Northeast maybe hasn't always had in previous decades, but we've got that ambition now. What we can't have is the infrastructure and the services which support those regional economies being shortchanged. And that's why it's so great to join you today, Ammar, because I think I'm really passionate to talk about this. And I think I'm so glad that there are people in the business community who have got those connections across businesses, large and small, who can advocate for this. Because obviously every day people have got their heads down at the moment trying to make their businesses work. And I think the fact that there are leaders in this sector, leaders in the region like you who are prepared to put their head above the parapet, it really is appreciated, Ammar. It's great to be with you again, actually, even if it's only virtual.
And it's a pleasure, and it's lovely to see that passion, Henry. It's quite refreshing, and it's wonderful to have someone at your place and space, championing the whole of the Northern Powerhouse, because I know that's exactly what you do, and you do so fairly and equitably. But I equally know in your heart there's a place and space for Newcastle and the Northeast in it, quite substantively. So really, really grateful for that. And I think it's incumbent upon every business leader or any community leader to sort of, at the right time, encourage, enable, empower, things to happen, but equally at the right time to stand up and say, we don't feel this is fair or equitable or inclusive. And, that's why Jalf and I are regularly quite vocal in this approach, but we do so with respect and appreciation that there are, we need to consider all sides and all aspects and appreciate some of the, the thought behind this. However, I don't think they've thought through the impact of it in any great detail. So, I'm hoping that this type of message is amplified and is fed back. And it's great to see, Transport North and all of these substantive and significant organisations playing their part as well as representative bodies of this. There's something going on in Newcastle today later on as well. Henry, are you able to share?
Yeah, no, 1:30. Yeah, if any business people want to come down, they're very welcome. So again, just message us at MP_partnership. We'll get people the details. But basically, down by the central station, about 1:15, we've got Nick Forbes, a great friend I know to your programme, coming along to do something with local business people. So people are very welcome to come down in the Newcastle United shirts and show that, particularly for fans, right, those who do like to go to away games. Clearly, this is a right pain because you will have a lot of people getting stuck at York Station waiting for a connection back to Newcastle, because coming back from Manchester, coming back from the northwest, people will be turfed off the train at York. And if the train's late or if the train they're connecting with is late, York Station, lovely as I like York as a city, is not somewhere you want to be hanging around late at night. And I think that's really the point, that I don't think that's not the way to encourage people to travel sustainably, right? What you're basically saying to people is, if you want to go to the northwest, get in your car. And I just think that in this day and age, as you say, particularly for people who might not be able to afford a car, a lot of younger people actually live in, not just in the West End, but across many parts of Newcastle, where I used to live in Heaton in the East End, don't have a car these days. You don't actually need one if you live in Newcastle. Do you mean particularly the public transport now, the bus, the metro is getting so good and so reliable on a good day. I know the metro's had challenges in the last few years, but on a good day, it does work. You don't necessarily think you need a car, right? And what we don't want to be saying to people is, actually, if you want to get on, if you want to have opportunities in a career, you have to rely on having a car. Because I know a lot of younger people in particular starting out in life, that's a real barrier, actually. Do you mean if you don't come from a family where mum and dad can afford to buy everyone a car, right? Some people are very lucky, but not every family that's the case. And I think I think there is that point about opportunity and aspiration, which is that I believe that the things that are available in other parts of the north of England should absolutely be there for young people wherever they grow up in the northeast. And sadly, I think a lot of people, whether it's a pit village in County Durham or some areas in Newcastle where you can see the city centre, sometimes it's hard enough to get young people to take up opportunities on their doorstep, never mind travel relatively far to go and access them. And if they were in London, right, there'd be a good train line to London, right? And it would have a train every 20 minutes and they wouldn't think anything of jumping on a train. But if you make it too expensive and if you make it too difficult, people don't think that an opportunity in Leeds or Manchester's for them. And I think we know that if we want our young people to succeed and thrive, we need to give them those life chances and make them available to them. And we don't want to have to send everyone to London, right? That's the problem. Like, if you can't get the opportunities in the northeast, we don't want people to have to leave the region. If they have to occasionally travel a bit further, if they can still live in the region and work slightly further afield, or vice versa, businesses in Newcastle can attract talent from a bit further afield. It'd be a much better labour market for everyone, both businesses and for the people in it. The challenge at the moment is, even within the northeast, the rail links aren't good enough. And that's why we're such passionate supporters of reopening something called the line down through to the old lines that would give us the connectivity and capacity to really get the better links into Newcastle, and those kind of commuter links, which we haven't currently got to Middlesbrough even reliably frequently. That would all be possible and opened up through something called the Leamside line. So these kind of opportunities to do things in the next 10 years, next 20 years are going to be transformative for Newcastle, be transformative for the wider northeast. But decisions like this that are so short-sighted and ill-informed are closing the doors to that better future that we want. So we're going to need to spend a lot of public money, but in what we need to do in the short term is make sure we don't stop people investing private money in Newcastle by making it too hard to get here and invest. Because what we do know is, obviously, in professional financial services, people do use the railway network and the connectivity, and it's far easier and quicker to go to Newcastle to London than it is to go across to Manchester and Liverpool. We've got to change that, because it has to be easier for people in the northeast to be able to stay in the region, rather than having to think that the only way to go and get on, if you can't get on in Newcastle, is to go to London, because that's the wrong message to send to a generation of young people in the city, I think.
You're absolutely right, Henry, and equally, it's also about facilitating inward, sort of onshoring or reshoring from other parts of the country. So it's equally, encouraging people from Manchester and Liverpool and Leeds to come and experience the wonderful northeast and everything that we have to offer here. And if we make it more difficult for them, then inevitably they're going to head south as well. So it's we should all be heading north, is what I'm asking and encouraging, and we should all be heading here to the best region in the world. But obviously, I'm quite biased, and I can be. Henry, thank you ever so much for coming on. Please come on and let us know how we can support and promote, and we'll probably interrogate you in the not too distant future on the Northern Powerhouse and ask the type of questions that people ask. And thank you for highlighting some of the incredible feats and achievements of the Northern Powerhouse that have impacted people across the Northeast. I think it's particularly important. People all too often get concerned or worried about what hasn't happened, as opposed to looking at all of the good things that have. And best of luck to everybody later on this afternoon in championing both Newcastle United and our wonderful rail system, given the fact that we were pioneers in rail.
Well, let's keep that connection to the Champions League line, the line that connects international aviation, not just in Newcastle but in Manchester together, and shows that European football future for the club. Let's hope.
Excellent.
Thanks again, Ammar. Thanks both of you so much. It's lovely to see you both.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that was Henry. Jalf. Interesting stuff.
Excellent. Well, it's very, very insightful, and it's very, very important, big, high-level situations that they find themselves in, and hopefully they'll be able to convince us, the people that need to be convinced, that you know, keeping that Pennine line as active and as quick as possible. It's great for the whole region, not just for Newcastle, but for Manchester and Leicester. Sorry, Manchester and Bradford and Leeds.
Yeah. Have you used the line to Manchester?
Once or twice, but like, you know, as with everyone, I haven't really found it to be the best. I mean, London to Newcastle is amazing, and it is poignant how the let's imagine that it would take 1.5 hours to get to Manchester. Wouldn't we go to Manchester so much more?
Yeah.
Because that's how it should take relatively, because the
Yeah.
distance of London is so far.
Yeah.
And it should be a direct train to Manchester from Newcastle.
Yeah.
You know, you would stop at Leeds, Bradford, Leeds, Manchester, then Liverpool,
Absolutely.
and that would be it. But obviously, it's not the case, and that's something that they do need to fix. It's important that they do push the people that need to be pushed to make that happen.
Wonderful. Right, we need to get Anu in as well. We're jumping from Henry to our second guest. Let's get Anu in, who's been patiently waiting. Good morning.
Would help. Morning.
Wonderful. There we go. I wasn't going to say you're on mute because it's the most stated word. I think it was entered into the Oxford Dictionary as a full word rather than two separate words. Anyway, or however many words it is, I can't even count. Good morning, Anu. Wonderful to have you on this morning. Are you okay?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No, and let's kick off by saying who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Well, we've just met in different arenas, but for those that don't know me, I am a lawyer. I work in-house for Malhotra Group, who own care homes, leisure sites and commercial property. And I live in Northumberland and have lived in the Northeast since I completed my master's in 2000, so 21 years I've been here.
And it was a wonderful year, I think, 2000, given the fact that you did your master's here. And so I knew that. Thanks for. Why did you go into law?
I think there's a variety of factors. I've always liked speaking on behalf of people, and there was sort of modern day influences at that time were sort of programs like Ally McBeal and LA Law that are on that sort of enticed me. But I always like advocating. I've always found that's a skill of mine. I've enjoyed sort of public speaking, and something that was encouraged by my family, and naturally I think it just lent itself to law. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I've not been, there's lots of people that don't know what their vocation in life is going to be, but I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a lawyer and help people.
Which is a great reason. And so you done your masters and then moved straight into law. Is that what sort of happened, or?
Yeah, so I originally did the bar vocational course, which is a barrister's qualification, and then came to working in the Northeast, decided to settle up here, met my husband, now husband. At the time, obviously we were dating then, and decided to settle up here as well. I love the Northeast as well. It's such a friendly place. Sense of community is really good as well. I had family up here, which was an easier transition. Found some paralegal work, and then started doing some immigration work for a while for a firm called Brow Smith & Co. And then was asked if I wanted to cross qualify, so I became a solicitor, and moved gradually into employment law a few years after that, and then practiced there for 11 years, and I've been an in-house lawyer for the last 4 years.
And that's an interesting transition, isn't it? Going from sort of, well, it's not quite public, but more public orientated to private, and is that sort of giving you more breadth and depth, Anu, in the type of things that you do, and what type of things do you do? Obviously, sensitively, and appreciate that it's confidential as well, so respecting all aspects of that.
Yeah, I'm sure my bosses will be listening, so I've got to be careful. No, it's 100% is a completely different ball game. In private practice, you're sort of at arm's length advising people. I predominantly did union work and legal aid. So, you know, it was a very different arena that I was working in. And then I moved into doing in-house work, and you're really in the thick of things. And that is a massive benefit in some ways, because you get to know the business, you understand the stakeholders, and actually the contribution that you give and the influence that you have is much greater. And that, you know, it's a bit of a cliche, but with great power comes great responsibility. So I always have that in the back of my head, is that my actions do have an impact on a large number of staff. We've got over 1,000 staff that we employ, and especially during the last year with COVID, the impact of our actions has an enormous effect on those people.
No, thanks for that. You know, and I suppose, you know, working in that diverse organisation, you've seen quite substantive peaks and troughs as well, certainly as a consequence of the last sort of 18 months, because the portfolio of interests is quite substantive in that, quite diverse, because it's care, it's hospitality, it's all of those things that were probably at the front line of that. And I know what type of, you know, how is that? I imagine it's been quite pressurized and challenging.
It absolutely has. I think the sectors that we operate in, I mean, in some ways, because we've diversified, they've been able to survive and thrive through this. On the flip side of things, both the sectors, leisure and care particularly, were hugely affected. Care to a certain extent, because we had to lock down, restrict visitors, you know, the extra precautions that were put in with PPE, etc. as well. So getting policies and practices together and really safeguarding the residents was the priority at that time. On the flip side of things, we had leisure, which was hugely affected in terms of closures. So dealing with putting people onto furlough when no one even knew what furlough was at that time. I think I was lucky in a way, because I came from an employment background, so it was actually easier for me to adapt and implement those types of things in terms of agreements and get the communications out than it would have been otherwise. But actually just making sure that the staff were looked after as well. We got as many people on furlough as we could. We could communicate with people. They were feeling really uncertain, worried about their jobs at the time. Shutting the sites down, moving people working to home as well from head office, which happened really suddenly. And it was actually, when I think back on it now, it feels like a bit of a blur, but at the time it was a really stressful period. But I was lucky I had a really supportive sort of management team that really pulled together, and we worked to put the communications out as well, you know, disseminate information, make sure that we got things on the website, and sites were looked after and staff were being communicated with, which I think is key more than anything else. But it was a very difficult, pressured time, especially I think March, April last year probably been the most sort of crucial times in my career. But you know, as I said, with support and having some resilience to get through that, we've managed to come through the other side.
Which is, it makes you more resilient, doesn't it? It almost, you know, that level of uncertainty. Jalf and I have spoken about this many a time. I mean, Jalf, you reacted quite positively. I appreciate it was the negative impact, but you know, Jalf has you know, some of the foremost restaurants in the world with some of the best Indian chefs supporting him, you know, in that. But Jalf, what did you do to cope?
I think ultimately it is, as Anu said, it's the management team that need to kind of go on that journey and believe in the direction that we need to kind of follow. I think ultimately being resilient, and we were very fortunate because, you know, we're just in one kind of, we're not as diverse and as dynamic as the Malhotra groups because we're just in hospitality. So I guess we're fortunate because of being an effectively an Indian restaurant operator, and that is it's kind of so good for takeaways that to switch to adjust the restaurant into takeaways whilst it took some doing. It was something that the transition wasn't as challenging as some other sectors that were just selling, that were kind of wet-led sales, whether it be the bars or the breweries. So we managed to adapt quite quickly, get the team on board, and be very, very versatile. I think that and then we did close at the beginning for 5 weeks, just to make that decision. We were told that, look, if we're industry leaders, lead and make a decision, close the entire operation, because we don't know what COVID is. You've got to keep the staff at home, keep them safe, which is what we did initially. And I think that gave us a lot of credibility, because when we were ready to open, we understood COVID far better, and we put all the procedures in place, and we opened a really, really safe environment, and our team, along with guests that visited, they felt comfortable. So I think that's what we did, and then you have to make the most of the situation, because you're not alone, you're not by yourself. It's happened to the entire country, and it is a matter of survival of the fittest. But if you make the right decisions as a collective, then it's usually the right one. So we kind of maximized what we could as an operator, and I think we've come out of it very, very well.
That's good. Anu, what did you learn about yourself? I know it's a bit of a challenging question. It's almost one of those interview type questions, but I'm just curious, as a leader, in business leader, as well as being a legal leader, what type of things did you learn about yourself over the last sort of 18 months?
I think predominantly is what the power of influence would be from my position. So how to implement that, how to communicate with people, that I was able to diversify and be versatile in these sort of situations and support people. So my previous line manager, it was he retired around the same time, but he'd kept in touch with me as well, and he really sort of said to me as well, think outside the box, don't always be so narrow thinking as a lawyer all the time as well, think about the wider picture as well. So for me, I think wearing different hats through that period especially, as well has made me more rounded individual and professional now, whereas before, you work in a silo as well, you're doing what you need to do, and we've been very proactive instead of being reactive, so looking at it in a holistic way. I feel that with a lot of good things have come out of COVID. Obviously it's been a terrible situation for the number of deaths and things like that, but seeing people really pulled together and mastering that sort of communication skill as well, and really sort of taking people on that journey and engaging with them when you're trying to deal with sort of crisis situation has been actually really rewarding for me, because I tapped into other resources, ex-colleagues as well, through people I've met through networking, and they've all been really supportive. Like I said, everyone's going through this sort of collective pandemic at the time, but it really actually on the other side of it, we've come out stronger, and I feel actually the skills that I've gained during this period, I wouldn't have necessarily if we hadn't had the pandemic. So it's really put us in a better position for the legal department. Again, going forward, if there's any outbreaks, we know what to do about it. If there's sort of any situations arise as well, we can deal with it very calmly. We've got measures and processes and procedures in place, and we are constantly communicating with people to make sure that they understand what they need to do, and they know that they can come to us.
And it's fantastic to hear that. It's I think that point around communication is sort of so critical to how you manage, maintain relationships. And effective communication was key, because everyone was in this level of uncertainty. Jalf, what did you learn about yourself during that period?
I think I learned that whilst in business, you're always there, you're working. I learned that I think we go to work and it's not for the bottom line, because it's really for the care of your team, and that's always been it's always been there in my heart anyway. So at that moment, I never really thought about, oh my God, the financial issues of the business. I was more concerned about the livelihood of the team that we employ, and we have 90. So I think it reinforced that thought, and I felt quite happy about myself that I naturally felt like that, as opposed to worrying about, oh my God, how we're going to pay the bills, how we're going to do this, because in our game we are about the team. It's such a team-led business, hospitality, and if your team is happy, then your business is going to function really, really well. So yeah, I think that's probably, if I was to learn it, did I learn that about myself, or was I kind of, I guess I was, in my heart, I was proud that that's the kind of mindset that came to me naturally.
No, thanks for that. I just think it's interesting to hear, because, primarily what we hear is all of the negatives. And of course, there's been substantive negatives as a consequence of COVID. But, people spending more time together as families, as colleagues, it's brought communities, it's developed sort of organizations. It's equally dispelled or dispersed or got shot of those type of organizations that didn't have a place in the current or world or the future. Sadly, some of them were long-term and long-time sort of names on high streets and things like that we all grew up with, which is really, really sad. But it just demonstrates that, it's the power of people, which is key. I know just now, one of the things and one of the reasons that we invited you on was obviously to hear from you, but equally to publicly thank you and congratulate you for being an awesome woman.
Thank you.
So how important is it to encourage and empower and enable other young Asian females thinking about, what am I going to be, what can I be, what should I be? How important is this role model aspect?
I think it's hugely important. I was really lucky. I came from a family where they were very supportive in whatever I wanted to do as well. I was never, I was never marginalized and said, you have to, I heard comments from other people while I was growing up saying, you need to go and marry someone rich, so they can look after you. And I never had that in the background. My dad was one of he had 6 sisters. They were all really strong, independent women as well. So I always had that ethos, but not everyone has that. And I think it's really important to see role models. I didn't see anyone that looked like me at a senior position when I was growing up, and I was told not to pursue my dreams because I wouldn't get anywhere, because I was double fold Asian and female. And so, if I had been inclined, luckily, reverse psychology works quite well on me. So if you say to me, I can't do something, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But if I hadn't been that way inclined, it could have put me off, and then I could have gone down a completely different career path. So if anyone's got that inclination and they are interested in the law, reach out. There's lots of people out there. Find mentors, speak to people that have been in that situation as well. Try and encourage other people to explore their options. It doesn't have to be law potentially as well, but just to see women in senior positions, I think, is really encouraging, because you can identify with them. Whereas before, if you're seeing, if your peers don't look like you, then you might be less inclined to take that jump and take that leap. Whereas hopefully, this campaign's amazing. I'm so proud to be part of it, because the women are exceptional and they are flying the flag, and they are really encouraging the next generation to say, there is no glass ceiling as well. You can be whatever you want to be. There are no barriers there to your aspirations.
And that's the key message, and it's wonderful to see that. And it's really, really important that we encourage more. Our ambition is to have at least 100 awesome women by the end of this year. So that, it's fantastic to have such a broad and wide representation currently of people from all sectors, from the public, private and third sector. And it's really, really important that it's local people to the Northeast and across the whole of the Tees Valley and North East, so people can see, people can reach out. And we're going to be recording some stories and things like that with you, alongside our other awesome women on top tips, what type of things to do, what type of things not to do. I mean, just very finally, because I know we're going to get cut off in a second, we're coming up to the end of the show. I mean, I was always looking for someone rich to marry as well. I just never found them and ended up here. But I think those sort of biases, those limitations, the perceptions that exist. We live in a different world, and it's really, really important that we encourage and empower not just only women. Every single young person should be given the opportunities, and that's why it's wonderful to see. So, ever so grateful for you coming on, Anu.
Thank you very much for having me.
So much. We'll get you back on and get into some more detail and data. But until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All the best.
Bye, Anna.
Take care.